Hey everyone, welcome. It's great to have everyone here for our fourth town hall. This is Richard, and I've got David with me, checking in from Thailand. Hi, Dave.
Hey everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Cool. First of all, what we'll do is we'll kick off in our kind of normal fashion, and I'll run through a very pleasantly long list of things to catch everyone up on since our last town hall. Then I'll hand over to David for a sort of tech side update. And again, we'll probably just blast through things there. And then we'd probably most like to throw the floor open to questions. I can see we've got 2 in already. This app has a really nice way of just letting people throw in questions. You can upvote them, by the way. So that'll let us know what most people are interested in. And then we'll kind of just round out the hour with getting stuck into some of those questions. We've had a lot of community growth and stuff as well, so I'm hoping there'll be some new people. Don't be shy to ask questions. Kind of the more fundamental, the more hard-hitting, the better. And without going on anymore, let's get into it. And as I said, there's been quite a bit happen since our last town hall. We've rounded out, on the marketing side, rounded out the Ultimate Citizen Challenge. That was really fun. And I'm hoping everybody who came top 5 now has their Saito merch. Thanks everyone for participating in that. And that kind of leads into just wanting to say generally a really big thank you to community. I mean, the biggest thing that's happened in marketing by far this last 6 weeks has been just the explosion of activity that's organically coming out of the community. And there's really not much we can do to promote Saito that competes with, just genuine community members being excited about Saito and just telling people what's got them interested, what they are here for. We're obviously the proud dads of this thing, and we spend a lot of time working on Saito, but there's just nothing like someone who's discovered what we're doing and found something there, just telling other people to get that out. And it's not just that. We love what people are doing. It's not just quality, it's the tone and the texture of it. We're really super happy with people getting out there and just spreading the word. And it's been beyond rewarding, I think, for David and for me to see people doing that. To that end, we've been concentrating on trying to do real things that engage with the community and let people know what we're doing. Our marketing has always, we've preferred to call it outreach, and it's always been more about trying to find people, bring them in, get them to understand what we're doing, and find a place for them to be part of that. And a big part of that has just been, spreading the word, straight up just getting notifications out, etc. And then we had a real success, I think, as well with that Web3, Building Web3 event. If anyone hasn't seen that, you can check that out on our YouTube channel. Just look for Saito Official on YouTube. That was really fun, and I think kind of set a template for us about how to engage with other projects and to kind of spread the word about the Web3 side of what we're doing with other people. And so, we'll be looking at maybe doing another one of those in a few months when the kind of time is right. Moving on to partnerships and kind of a bit more project news, obviously a lot's been happening on that front. We have another swap open on SIFChain, which is really growing in their community, and people can go along and have a look. Just look for the SIFChain. SIFChain, their exchange is picking up. I really like what they're trying to do around fees and keeping things kind of affordable and effective for communities. So that's been really helpful, as has the partnership we've entered with AnySwap, where it's now possible to wrap Saito tokens onto the Binance Smart Chain as BEP20 Saito. That obviously opens up a world of possibilities. And what we've been doing is slowly talking to some of our supporters and also the community about how we can make that most useful for the community. The big goals there for us are obviously, and this is an open call to the community, Bitcoin has stacking sats. The smallest item in Saito is a Nolan. So there's got to be some great phrase for collecting Nolans. But basically, we want to let people come in at any level. We don't want to have it so that you need to want to buy $1,000 of Saito or more to be able to do it on a decentralized exchange. So that's a big thing we're looking to for the community, as well as ways for the community to be rewarded for holding in liquidity pools and things beyond what's obviously available on Uniswap. So we're looking into the best way to do that, obviously with the liquidity and stuff that's available in a way that solves those problems for community. That's obviously our primary goal. There's a lot of, honestly, shitcoinery available. You can do all sorts of giveaways and things like that we feel would primarily just dilute value for holders. So we're trying to look for the best options there to give a real DEX option to people. Just on the project more centrally, we've had the third of the vesting periods go through. We've been using that as an opportunity to connect with all of our supporters and make sure we're properly connected with them, and they're helping us get the word out, etc. about Saito. That's been very productive, and I think you'll see even more activity from our supporters and from us because of that. We've also submitted the second and final milestone for the Web3 grant. And that's been an important partnership for us, and I think this second piece really sets the ground for some really exciting stuff we have coming up around expanding the work we've done with Polkadot to make it generic across cryptocurrencies and chains throughout the ecosystem. And so that's stuff to watch out for from us. So hopefully in the kind of roadmap that we're putting together, you'll start seeing some information about that, as well as things that people might be, anticipating a bit more. But that's some of the most exciting stuff we'll be talking about. In terms of that, we have also had 2 developers start this week, which is obviously big strides for the project, and we're continuing to hire in a couple of roles. We're narrowing in on a product manager type person, and we're also still looking to expand our outreach capability. And then this sort of starts merging into tech, but we've also had a lot of work go on just sort of under the hood and aligned with the milestone delivery on tightening up what we're doing with the arcade and just getting the experience there smoother, but also the underlying code ready for us to kick off and do a lot more work in that area. And we also added a game, which was actually one I wrote with my son over summer. And what's been really cool about that, it's called Wuzichi. It's just 5 in a row on a Go board. What's been really cool about that was the original thing we created looked a lot like something that was created by a kid and his dad over summer. But we've had some really great community input and improvement on that. And I think that provides a great template for us on how to make new and exciting things on the arcade and, make it even better and better as something we do with an open community. So I think that's really the majority of the kind of quick updates. I'll hand over to David now for some kind of words on tech, and then we'll move on to questions.
Yeah, Richard, how much is this kind of like forward-looking roadmap, and how much of this is where we are? Is kind of the question I've got.
I think most of it can be this is where we are. I think we're kind of updating people here.
Okay, yeah, because I think like with roadmap stuff, we kind of know what we're doing and we need to put it together, and we don't want to dump like text on people because we know a lot of people, people want something with polish. Maybe we can deal with this kind of stuff in questions. Tech, the milestone 2 thing actually kind of fell a bit in our lap. We've been holding off on that because Polkadot's been slow. As you guys know, we had some original, like the Dot Arcade, where you could theoretically come in with Dot and Kusama or West End. It wasn't really seamless on the arcade. We kind of had to have that separate funnel. And one of the issues we ran into it with, which is what put us in wait mode, is that there wasn't really a suitable Dot ecosystem token for us to even push or do outreach with around. And, with Kusama, and like fees and that sort of thing, people weren't going to come in and play poker and, swap with fees every single hand. So with forward-looking stuff, actually, some of the stuff we're looking to bring in the next quarter is stuff that will be more general across a lot of other cryptos. And we've kind of got strategy on onboarding that, but also having the ability for people to kind of deposit the tokens and then use them in Saito and then withdraw when they want to withdraw. So it's not like using MetaMask every like 20 times in a game. So yeah, so with tech, I'd say for the last 3 weeks or so, that's been not in the focus, but it's taken up a lot of time. The reason we moved on it is because we got a ping from the dot guys about it, and so we're like, well, okay, we'll push it through. We're still going to wait, I think, with the Web3 stuff until we do a push for that, simply because we don't think dot's ready for it. They're kind of focused on the parachain auctions. Rust is moving forward. That's taken some time off of Rust, but Rust is moving forward. The networking stuff is the stuff that's really not completed yet. And what we've also started doing at the same time is upgrading the in-browser JavaScript version, because the Rust client has a bunch of improvements to the way consensus works, and we need to get those into the in-browser version. And so we're now, in addition to the networking stuff, we've got the in-browser version getting updated so they speak the same language, they stay in consensus. And when that's done, basically, they're both going to go onto the network and we're going to have this upgrade. In terms of kind of a loose forward-looking roadmap, I know we've got things like staking and token persistence that we'll be sharing dates with you guys on. I think we're looking at a certain period for making sure there's no unholy hell when the network goes live. And then we're going to start adding these features. And the idea is that, continue to work on Rust, continue to work on JavaScript while we start a lot of work on kind of the in-browser ecosystem and use that to be driving transaction volume and growth. One of the things I'm happiest with is that we're actually starting to shift to some real organic traction with the arcade, with some of the games in particular, where people are actually coming for the gaming. I think that also the Web3 stuff, the milestone 2 that we've delivered it's also helping us up the game on the playability of this stuff. There's been a lot of improvements to things like the way overlays are handled, the way cards appear on the deck, the way you click things and code things, that should make it a lot easier for us to pump out essentially any card game. If you've looked at blackjack and poker, you should see some improvements, but Red Imperium is another big one. And we also have other games in the pipeline that they're in different stages of development. You guys will know what at least one of them is. The second's a bit of a surprise, but yeah, we can talk about this stuff maybe in the roadmap. If anyone has any specific questions, bring them up. Richard?
Cool. Yeah, thank you. I think the next thing to do is we're seeing 11 or so questions coming in. I think we could probably just start tackling those. I'm not sure if you can see the interface for that, David, but brilliant.
Slides up right over my face.
Okay, brilliant. So I think I'm just looking through, thinking about what kind of order we want to hit them in, because there's usually some duplicates in here.
Circulating supply.
Yeah, if you can hit that one, I'll line one up for me next.
Sure. I think this kind of comes to the questions of roadmap and why we want to get it right is, because we've been working heavily on the backend code with Rust and stuff, we can see that there's kind of like this void of what is the big thing that we can use to drive interest and be talking about stuff with. And the roadmap, we're hoping to answer that question because there's going to be a lot of public user-face stuff happening. Part of the challenges with the roadmap is we've got the token distribution and supply is the way it is because of the way we were having to handle the IDO and kind of like our initial launch out with the Polka starter and like that community. People expect that kind of breakdown. That doesn't mean we know for sure what exactly we are going to be doing with the 70% that's allocated. We've got like rough carve downs. We don't even know necessarily if these tokens are going to be released. What we don't want to do, however, is we do not want to commit to a public strategy for releasing them that is counterproductive to the goals of what we're doing. That might be something like a really bad pay-to-play strategy where you buy traffic and you buy a 2-month pump and then the tokens dump because you flooded them out to people who aren't using the network. So the roadmap is going to talk about tokenomics, but to kind of give you a sense of what that is, we're looking at having the token supply increase relative to usage on the network and activity. We understand that token price is something that is a really, really powerful marketing tool, and we think it's important to be sensitive around that. I'm not really sure how much more specific we can be, other than like there's a portion that's the community foundation. We have no idea. We have no idea how we're going to manage that. We're hoping to work with you guys and set up some kind of foundation or something. It's not something we're dealing with yet, because people approach these questions when they're thinking about DeFi, and they're kind of treating Saito like a DeFi thing instead of what we've really got, which is we've got the Bitcoin distribution problem, but we don't have a block reward, which is negative because we don't have, well, maybe it's negative because we don't have, we can't say, hey, it's
a challenge.
But it's also positive because I think people are beginning to realize, actually in the last 2 weeks, that we don't have a block reward with extra Saito hitting the market every hour. And the activity and the interest really is being driven by the expansion of people learning about what we're doing. So yeah, you can expect details. The broadest picture is the faucet that we're really interested in is the advertising faucet. We want to be bleeding tokens out to people who are using the network through an advertising network. So you're using the Saito applications, you install an advertising module, you are now getting tokens in slowly because we're showing you ads. Ideally, we can spin that off onto a separate company or get someone independently to manage that who's not the core team. But in order for that to really work, we need to get the applications and the usability to the point that people are actually coming. And that's why with the organic growth, we're particularly happy and we're looking at this stuff.
Yeah, that's a classic bootstrapping problem where you need enough traffic to make it worthwhile for someone to move, dedicated team at their, company to look at putting ads on our network. On the other hand, if we can get it to work, it'll be the most powerful thing in Web3 because it'll be the simplest way for people to come across from their Web2 experience of things seeming free, but coming into a space where their privacy and their autonomy is being honored, but without having to go and use MetaMask to buy a token to do it.
Yeah.
So we're really keen on that model, but like everything here, I think, it's time to get it right and to make sure we execute it properly.
It also, maybe just to finish, it depends on how people approach it. I think the people that are really concerned about this are coming from a DeFi background and they don't know what we're doing and they're new to the project. And so they're like, hey, is there a rug pull coming? And, 6 months ago, we got a lot of that, the night of the IDO, and there were questions because Saito is just a token and people don't understand. The important thing is that we get the circulating supply and the distribution strategy with the growth strategy so that it pushes the network instead of cripples us. We're not interested in committing to something for the stuff that we don't need to, unless we know that it's rocket fuel behind us, all of us, I will say also maybe that focusing on that short term might not be productive because, token persistence and stuff needs to be there for every token in really small amounts before people should be worried about anything like that. And we've still got a time to go before that.
Cool. I think moving on to the next question, maybe David and I can both.
Why don't you start?
Yeah, but maybe we can both just give a quick response to this one because I think it's an interesting one that'll give some color, but it's sort of not too central. Highlights and challenges that we faced this month. I think for me, the absolute highlight has been opening Twitter and just seeing people, having fun and getting into the project and new and creative things happening around what we've been building for so long. So that to me has been the absolute highlight, I think. Also not bad building the list of announcements for tonight's thing and seeing just how much we've achieved in the last month and a bit. Challenges, things like hiring are always challenging. We had a great candidate on the line who pulled out at the last minute for personal reasons on a gig, and you have to start again. Building the team, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. But it's also a lovely, experience to get to meet people and to start adding some real engines to what we're doing. How about you, David?
For me, I think the biggest challenge is that we've been transitioning from a mode of code development which has a lot of internal knowledge in my head and in Richard's head, and towards a mode of development where we can have a bigger team and we can onboard new developers. And that's been a challenge because it's, not everyone is always on the same page with that. But I'm happy where we are with that. I mean, it's a challenge in the way everything else is a challenge. And it's just what we've been dealing with this month because we've been focused on that sort of work, Yeah,
I think that's also one of those things where it's a success problem. We're bringing people on. So that's good. What about a highlight? That was you went straight to the challenge.
Oh, I love the Twitter stuff. What I love, I mean, anyone we've got here, people here. I see Greenie, I see Lawrence, and there are people here who've been here a while, and you guys know 6 months ago what it was like, and you've seen for yourself, like the old timers. When people come, they go, "Hey, why isn't anyone telling me about Saito?" And then as people learn about it and like really dig into it, they realize why no one's telling you about Saito, because it's hard work to learn. And when you realize how it goes, you go, "Okay, well, I understand." And so for me, it's not just like the Twitter stuff. It's actually seeing people on Twitter who really understand it. And it's really great for the team because it feels a lot less uphill. Like Richard and I, we've been working on this a long time, and people expect in the space to be told what Saito is in 10 seconds and then understand it. So like we used to go into a meeting or talk to someone and we'd say, "Oh, well, we pay for routing." And they're like, "Oh, so you're like this with that." And it's like, no, it's not like that at all. And I think it's going to be explosively powerful. I know a lot of people are focused on that in terms of price, but we're not anywhere yet. But we're moving in the right direction. I think it's really important looking at that also, that we keep tech and we keep the system expanding as quickly as possible so that when the deluge hits, we're able to scale up to it.
I think on that as well, that's like to David's point earlier, it's one of the challenges we face is living in a world that's post Bitcoin, post Ethereum, and post tokens, and post DeFi. So people want an answer like, "We're mortgages on a blockchain," which is a really simple, people do that. That's a really simple thing to understand. And Saito's, much more fundamental. It's not complicated, but it's a solution to a problem that's kind of hiding in plain sight in the blockchain space. And that makes it, a little bit more of a challenge to communicate, which is something we're working on.
People don't see it because they've got blockers on. I mean, people put decentralization and tech between them and the economics. So it's like pointing it out and they're like, "What do you mean? It's decentralized."
Yeah, cool. David, do you want to tackle this next one up the top, the L1s and gas fees, etc.?
Sure. Maybe let's do the scalability trilemma. I see cryptoshepherd.eth. It's the short answer is that if you want scale, you should be paying for people to scale. Whatever you want, you should be incentivizing that. And so the question really is, well, how does Saito incentivize scale in a way that proof of work and proof of stake don't? Well, we pay for fee collection. So if you want to, the way consensus works, if you route transactions with fees into the network, you're going to get a tiny fraction of them paid back to you over time. So the way you make more money is go out and collect more transactions. A great way to do that, beef up your server. Another great way to do that, beef up your server and optimize like the software that you're using to connect with other nodes. There can be multiple, you don't need to use our software. You can develop something that eliminates TCP IP and gets a 30% boost in data throughput on that level. You could be coding routers that do hardware level cryptographic SIGs, so you avoid the need for software even in routing. The more data you push through and the more scale that you can handle, the more money you individually make. And that's not true in proof of work and proof of stake. In both of those, there are profitable incentivized strategies where you can shirk work. Maybe I can briefly just address it through the second, which is the scalability trilemma, because that's also a really useful way of thinking about it. What's happened in proof of work and proof of stake, and Vitalik is really triggering this, is he notices that there's this trade-off between scale and decentralization. So if you've got a limited amount of money that the blockchain's collecting, you can either use it to pay for really powerful servers, or you can use it to pay for a lot of weaker servers. And that's the trade-off. And it's a scale decentralization trade-off. Vitalik and other people then look at this and they realize, well, for security, we also have to pay for mining and staking. And it's the return on investment you offer that activity, which induces it, and your cost of attack scales with the amount of that activity. So proof of work and proof of stake, you've got this one pool of money that needs to pay for three things: scale, decentralization, security. And because you can only spend $1 on one thing, if you want to increase anything, you've got to decrease one of the others. That's the intuitive explanation of the scalability trilemma. So how does routing consensus mitigate that? Well, the first thing to know is the security comes from paying for the network. So we're still stuck with the scale and decentralization trade-off because we've still got a limited amount of money and we've got servers to pay for. But by paying for those servers, we are enabling different routing configurations, and we don't need to spend extra money on security. So it's kind of like we can use, if you can think of it like we've dropped one corner of the triangle because we're getting security from running the network. So, you know, there are a lot of different ways to approach scalability, but that's a big one. I'd also encourage people to look into the transient chain. The transient chain mechanism is basically a rent. It's a rent mechanism. The difference is that in Ethereum and proof of stake circles, what you have is you have developers who are essentially hard coding the economics. The transient chain approach with automatic transaction rebroadcasting, the market actually decides what the cost is, and that means that it's optimal. And it also allows for more scale because there's a lot of use cases that are perfectly happy being on the blockchain for a month and then disappearing forever. And if you do have a use case that requires permanent on-chain usage, you're not competing with all of them. So the fact that Saito has this rent mechanism that allows data to kind of get removed means it's cheaper for everyone, regardless of whether you want this one-time pass-through or whether you really want to be keeping the data on the blockchain forever. Richard, you have anything to add?
I think that's a good answer there. It's one of those things that comes up for us a lot because, you know, it's something we're I think try and aim at the heart of. So I think that's good.
There's also simple ones like which network is going to be more scalable, the one that pays for ASICs or the one that pays people to set up servers and buy bandwidth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. I might take this next one about BEP20 land. So this is a really important question. And our first thing we've had to do is make absolutely sure that the AnySwap contract is secure enough, etc., to be involved with it. So we're happy on that account, but we're still treading carefully because of these exact questions. And our biggest concern here is really, number one, is it suitable for the community? Are we putting people at any risk? Are we exposing them to any situations that aren't good for them? Yeah. And that relays into what's good for the project. So we have no objection to locking up some of the ETH ERC20 Saito as a BEP20 Saito of our own contract making, if that's going to help people. So our first and next step is to survey folks and see, set some thresholds for how much Saito we want wrapped on the the BSC chain before we think it's worth putting project time and resources into pursuing something there, because I don't think anyone on the project wants us doing a big effort to get something to happen, and then it's not really serving any big purpose for the community or for the project. So obviously usability and safety, security first, then, is it a need that the community have? And we have to balance that with obviously the core dev and those sorts of things, but also with looking at centralized exchanges, if that's more suitable for people, and other partnerships. So no objection to a BEP20 Saito token. Obviously we have a completely secure smart contract. We could do that with that we've already used for the RC20, but that's time and resources and execution we don't want to necessarily deploy until we know it's going to help enough people to make it worthwhile. If that makes it easier for people to become part of the Saito community and to use Saito, then it's probably worth pursuing, but we need to look at those steps.
People talk about staking. It's worth pointing out there's money on the table there if you trust the AnySwap bridge. Right, like the risk is that the AnySwap bridge gets hacked, and then they have the Saito tokens, and you're stuck with BP. We've got a couple of ideas like guaranteeing that stuff, or, but yeah, I mean, one of the things I think, Richard, is like it's a tremendous amount of work. There's money. We haven't been moving too quickly because we're kind of curious if people will move on solving this themselves.
Yeah,
like the Uniswap is making us money, interestingly.
Right. Yeah, it's a question. I mean, you have to have exposure to the market movements if you're on Uniswap. So we're making sure that there's that facility there for the community, but we're also then using that to support
the big problem is you have to be willing to sell at some exchange rate. So
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll get more details out soon, I think.
Yeah. Another one.
You want me to tackle George's?
Yeah, sure.
I can tell you guys what we're thinking. Like I said, we need to get this Rust out, and we need Rust, and I call it Saito Light Rust. It's a private repository now. So those are kind of, once they're live and they're capable of supporting, we need to throw them at each other. We're going to need a bit of time to make sure that they're not imploding. And then, when they're smooth enough, we need to be able to migrate the arcade and the transaction volume onto the new software client. I don't know how long this takes. Bear in mind, we're onboarding new developers at the same time. We're probably going to be dealing with refactors of various components at various times. What we're looking at is bringing the token permanence on basically the same way that Kusama kind of does it with reaping. Which is you guys can think about it. Let us know what you think, because this is a useful thing for us to be talking with you about. The idea is that we will be guaranteeing token balances on the network at a kind of falling level. So someone who has a big balance in the staking mechanism, if the network gets reset, we will guarantee that those tokens are there when it's reset. But we don't need to worry about someone who has like a 5 Saito token balance. So that kind of stuff doesn't need to slow us down. And what we're looking at is we're trying to figure out, does this work? How does it work with things like the token release schedule? And when we can be saying, look, we're going to be guaranteeing various levels and how quickly it falls. So that's the general approach. And I think the dates get fuzzier the further out we go.
Yeah, I think on that, one of the things you can say, it's kind of like quantum physics, right? The more definitely you give a date in software development, the more you have to pad it for security, and you're still at risk of overrunning it, because software development requires iterative working towards a point, and you discover things along the way. That's just the way it is. So we don't, what we are most keen on doing first is getting the messaging out there of what the stages are, and as much information as we can about timing on those as we can, letting people know what targets are, etc. We want to be as open and transparent as possible, but we need to be careful with messaging, because things get away from you as soon as you say something in this field, like most. So
it's the F2 problem. The other thing maybe with staking, to point
the lightning problem.
The other thing with staking is the staking strategically is tied to token distribution. A lot of people don't realize this because when they hear staking, they think like, oh, there's an annual guaranteed percentage, whatever. It's like, well, we can enable staking, but to enable staking and have it really working, what we need is we need to be feeding we need to be feeding Saito out into the community so that people are actually paying fees. So like the software is going to support staking. I think it depends on depends on what's going to happen in 2 to 3 months, I think. But those are two problems that go hand in hand. Because we could say, hey guys, staking is going to be on this date. And if we don't have the advertising faucet and we don't have a strategy for how we're productively getting tokens into the hands of people using the network, like, well, you can stake, but there's not going to be a ton of revenue. So, ideally what we have is it's why it's kind of like the roadmap, right? Because we're kind of saying these problems are related. Here's our strategy for solving them in this order. That's why when the roadmap comes out, you guys are going to see that there's a focus on when we're actually getting usable things in different stages on the live network so that we can promote them as a community, so that we can use them to be driving transaction volume. It's also why I'm really pleased with the arcade lately as well.
It's been great.
Like seeing people come into the games is exactly what we need.
Yeah. Cool. Just to let people know, there's a bunch of related questions below, so I will probably skip those in the hope that we've covered things just to make sure we get to everything. So the next one I've got up is, I think I can take this one about, are there any partnerships in the coming months? Yeah. Yes, there are. We're looking again at some simple things to answer those two big questions we have for the community, making it easier and simpler to get your hands on Saito and to make it cheaper to transact them. Wallet partnerships. We continue to talk to exchanges, but we always do that in the context of what's good for the project. And again, that means not throwing project resources around, just sloshing money around to create new whales, to counteract, the benefits to the project and holders of being listed in the first place. So we have a couple of exciting things coming up that hopefully we can announce. We'll be announcing over the next couple of weeks. There's always ongoing work. That's one of the things we've discovered is also the most powerful way for us to move the project forward is to do genuine partnerships with people that actually result in something. And I think when we talk about that generic crypto, there's kind of two layers there of partnerships. One is we'll be partnering with someone to build basically a large part of the engine of that to make it possible. And that'll be a really tight partnership, kind of project to project. But then we'll also be in a much better state to be able to integrate, basically we call it generic crypto because it could be, Bitcoin, or it could be a BSC, DeFi project, to integrate those into Saito applications in a very similar way, in fact, a slightly better way than what you saw with the .arcade stuff. Did you want to add anything to that, David?
I just add that, people talk about new stuff, but like the Elrond community, I love those guys. We haven't forgotten them. There are partnerships that are in process, and stuff like Web3 makes it a lot easier for us to do this. It's going to be a lot easier for us to get, Elrond into the arcade. And, that's part of the strategic roadmap too. We're not going out and chasing partnerships for the sake of having them. I'm actually, one concern is because it takes up dev time. So it's making sure we're doing things and, moving things forward.
Yeah, we've also turned down, my inbox is where these things come, and we turned down quite a few kind of empty partnerships that would literally just be two logos on an announcement type stuff. We're just not keen on pushing that kind of thing. So we are working on some genuine partnerships for the future. Cool. Do we want to get on to this next roadmap?
I mean, we right now we kind of know what we're going to say. The last 2 weeks have been full on. I mean, you kind of think that, hey, next week it's going to ease up, and then it doesn't. So yeah, we know we need to do it. We want to get something that's nicely designed. We don't want to just be punching out like a text document. ETA, Richard, what do you think?
It's high priority the coming week, and we're hoping to have something, the bulk of the text, etc., done in the next week. And it's just a matter of, like David says, getting it presentable and getting all the feedback and stuff we need. So yeah, we're hoping very, very much it's in the next week and a bit.
Yeah, I'd say 7 to 10 maybe.
Yeah, days, not weeks.
It's 7 to 10.
7 to 10, but I didn't say what.
You want me to take the onboarding third-party developers one?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the problem. It's also the opportunity. When we started with Saito, it's like, well, how do you even get somebody to see this? And in blockchain, which is, they were our big backer, Lee Xiaolai, the guy's a genius. You guys are going to love him very shortly. And I remember our first meeting was with a guy from in blockchain who I knew, and someone else. And the someone else's reaction was, well, why do I need email on a blockchain?
Eric.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tattle on them. But so a lot of the early applications were trying to get people to see the potential of putting data in transactions. And post mid 2017, if you guys were around there, you'll know, like the EVM became applications. So we had situations where people are like, yes, but where's the EVM? Because we see that you run applications. People really couldn't conceptualize that you could do things like put data in a transaction and send it across the network. Yeah, okay.
I was just going to say, I think people saw that with Bitcoin. Early days, people were super excited about putting little bits of data in your unstoppable messages. And they had this really strong idea of that. And then that became way too expensive. And the next thing that looked like it was Ethereum and the EVM. So everybody jumped on that, and they forgot that original design pattern that was only problematic because it was too expensive on BTC.
Yeah, they shrunk the op return fields. And I mean, this is interestingly, like, we have a complicated relationship with BSV because we know a lot of people in there. We kind of take the economic model seriously enough to critique it, which nobody else that I really know in projects does. But at the same time, we're like, hey, look, your system's broken. One of the things that's interesting looking at them from our perspective is that they do take op return seriously. They just don't understand the economics, and so they're falling into a monopoly. So maybe back to the question with third-party developers. The old way that apps are built, it's kind of like a house that was built in the 18th century and has been like, built up and built up and built up. And over time, we've added features, and 17th century, we've learned how to do things. And we've had a lot of feedback from Escaped Cat about how, really, guys, this is hard. It's hard to build on, it's hard to understand, and that's entirely true. The good news is all of the apps and all of the infrastructure that we've done already, it's continued to support because it's open source code and it's super easy for us to support this. One of the things that we've learned, though, with third-party developers is we really need to make it easier. We need to make building on Saito like building on React, or like building on Angular, like building on these systems that people already know. And so when they kind of wander into the Saito development land, they're not like, okay, I kind of like this, but what the hell is going on, and why are these random functions? Okay, everybody's got what they want, so yeah, Vue too. We know we need to do this, and we know that until we do it, it's going to be really hard for third-party developers to build stuff and want to build stuff and get us massive transaction volume. And so this is why the arcade is it's partly why the arcade is a leading strategy for us, because of all of the demos and the stuff that we've done in-house. The arcade is the one where we look at what's happening and we're like, okay, we can get to 1 million transactions here. And if we can get to 1 million, we can get to 10 million. So the development question, I think, there is, it's like a dev resource thing of when we can get because we kind of get, you get like the blockchain level here, and then you get the application level that is interpreting the data in the blockchain. And we can upgrade this and change it and have a lot of ways of handling it, but it does need dev effort and does need dev time. And so this is, again, it's the roadmap of how do we handle the trade-offs. Part of it is also like making it easier for people to run nodes. Strategically, what I think, there are plans in place. Every time we work on, I'm trying to improve the Saito Light Rust to make it easier as part of this upgrade. I think the strategy is arcade first because that's fastest, and have the development stuff come along after the fact. And it's going to be less publicly visible, but it will kick in. And ideally, you know, we're going to be going to people and saying, look, you know, you want to use this because you can look at the stuff that's running. You can look at the fact we've already got a community and you can integrate with it. Make sense, Richard?
Absolutely. I think it's just looking, we've got just over 10 minutes and 14 minutes left. So we might start kind of breezing through some of these, just giving a quicker level answer, just because there's more questions coming in thick and fast, which is great to see. But there's some of them that we can just kind of, not quite yes or no, but answer quite quickly. So there's always Telegram. If you want to hit up anyone on the project for more of an answer on these things later. We do like to kind of answer questions, but we're also trying to just satisfy everyone here. I think in terms of, can there be a specific how to run a node cheat sheet, as well as will there be specific hardware requirements? Yes, we've got instructions now for running a node on the current network, and yes, we'll have full instructions on how to get up and running with Saito nodes, as the software is ready for people to start joining the network. Thing there with hardware requirements is you'll be able to compile Rust and run it on a Raspberry Pi. The question is, as is always the case with Saito, will that create a node that is useful to people? So the much bigger question to ask yourself is, what's my path to garnering transactions? What can I do that's useful, that people need, because that's where the real revenue is going to come from.
Like hooking in Saito to a particular community, giving them really well integrated Web3 services, and then being the place they go for their needs. Instant transaction flow. You want me to take the marketing question with level 1 exchanges? I just quickly answered that I think the priority for us is more liquidity on BSC. We haven't done a push or reach out or really any announcements with that. It's kind of just happened. And I'd say that's what you guys should expect from us before we are dealing with other level 1 exchanges. Richard? Can you guys actually hear me? Really? Okay, wow. Well, with Richard gone, guys, do you want to keep doing questions? I can read what you're saying. So any upcoming work with partners other than the Web3 Foundation? I think that's the partnership question. Expect news in about 2 months. Can you elaborate more on the status of the parachain auction? I can't, because we're not a parachain project. I'm hoping that we will be able to do more reach out for DOT when we get the generic Web3 stuff. One of the advantages there is that right now the DOT modules are really, really specific to Polkadot and Kusama and West End. And one of the things that's happened actually is because they keep breaking on the dot side, and occasionally that actually causes issues for us. So we want to be doing reach out with infrastructure where we don't need to be constantly babysitting our own deployment of a Polkadot server. Mainnet tokens, I think we've talked about that. What's the max and total supply of Saito? It's mainnet, it's 10 billion. ERC20, it's 3 billion. See the Tokenomics doc, ask questions in Telegram. Keep going. George, I remember reading an old blog post which mentioned replacing ASIC farms with fiber optic cables. Yeah, that's what we pay for. You know, you got to be pushing transactions into the network, and the more transactions with fees you push into the network, the more you get paid. One useful thing to remember if you're new to Saito is it's not just the service of running the blockchain. It can also be the data services that kind of surround it. Think of the way that, like with Gmail, why do a lot of people use Gmail? It's not just because they're like the standard mail transport protocol. They also provide data archiving and storage services, and they store your email. So it can be the same with a blockchain, right? Like it's not necessarily just fiber optics. It's like there are a lot of applications. Think like distributed Facebook, where when I make a Facebook post, it's a transaction that has data in it. Maybe I don't want to be broadcasting all of these on chain. So I upload them to my transaction archive, and I send cryptographic proofs that let my friends come and access them. So doing that kind of data infrastructure that makes the blockchain useful in this totally different way is now the reason that I'm connecting to this Saito access point. So yeah, we're paying for bandwidth, but it's a bigger thing. It's in order to get my business, you've got to give me value, and that can be data storage as well. It can be, you know, like chat. A lot of people don't know this. Chat is both on chain, but the Saito server right now, to get that real time love, it will do things like it will relay the chat to people. And so you can have like servers offering relay services and off-chain data relay services as the reason you connect to that edge point. And they're doing it because if they can get you connecting, well, then they can get the money from transaction flow. Richard, if you're here, you want to tackle this question? Or the Mesin one? Someone's heard of Mesin. That's actually, we've talked about Mesin. You're going to hear more about Mesin. Did Richard disappear again? Can you? Okay, let's do this website UI UX stuff while Richard is gone. People say the website sucks. It's not that bad. It used to be much worse. We know we need to improve it. A lot of people don't realize that we've actually been using the front edge, the user-facing stuff to try to experiment with getting people to understand Saito. So yeah, our first website was awful. In fact, the first website, literally, people wanted a website where they could go to get the white paper. We didn't even have a white paper. So we had to we turned the patent application doc into the white paper so that there was a white paper for people to read, because if we just sent them the description of the network, they're like, well, this is nice, but where's the white paper? Anyway, right now we've got three positions or three ways of reaching out to people. We've got the arcade, which is pretty much where we try to send users. And we try to send users to the arcade because we want to see how easy it is to onboard people. We want to get transaction volume. We want to find out the problems with like that kind of service. So we're not expecting users to go to Saito.io. We've got org.saito.tech, which is kind of the back end. This is how it works. And we've got the Saito.io page, which was basically like, well, if you're not a user and any remotely technical discussion is going to confuse you, we want to send you to something that's kind of the project, but that's not going to confuse you. So there's this weird thing with messaging where, like Saito.io, one of the reasons it's the way it is because we needed to talk to people who did not understand Saito or who would get confused if we tried to talk to them about the tech stuff. So it was kind of like, what's the most inoffensive front page we can give people that is going to get them into the arcade or get them to the more tech stuff, if they're capable of it. But at the same time, also kind of get them interested. So that's why Saito.io is the way it is. We do need to do it. We know we need to redo it because we're past the point in development where that makes sense. The point in time we're looking at is about 2 months out. And the reason for this is that until the Web3 stuff comes online, we don't think that any message that we target on that front page is going to be realistic or valid for more than like a month and a half, because we need the messaging on the front page to support the arcade. So that's why the way it is now. I will say that we're looking for help with it. So yeah, like we know people don't like it. We would love to actually be hiring more help with this. So if you guys know people who are good, put them in touch. But the timeline for that, I think, is about 2 months. Next question. ISP level node. I mean, we need to get transaction volume up. Without transaction volume up, cost of attack is low. So ISP level node, I mean, a decent machine will do it for some time, especially with Rust. I'm going to skip the Elastos question because, like, you know, like randomly coming in and asking about other networks is, it's not something on the fly. Like, we do kind of look at them sometimes, but, you know, if it's proof of stake, I'd give the proof of stake critique. And I guess with the slides, I'd say go to org.saito.tech. And we've got a couple of things in the sidebar that are more visual, that are videos or PPTs that kind of explain routing work, the automatic transaction broadcasting system. So the white paper is like, it's legit hard. The feedback that we've got is that it doesn't make any sense. And then people learn how Saito works and they go back and they read it and they go, it makes perfect sense. So we, you know, we do have that stuff. org.saito.tech. We've got some videos too. I think those are the questions, Richard.
I think hopefully my internet and sound, etc., is working now. To finish the point I was trying to make just briefly before, I love what StackOS did with their kind of how they set out their roadmap, and we'll steal from it liberally. They're good friends, and we'll take a leaf out of their book. I think that's some really good communication they've done there. And getting that right is important to us. So absolutely, we'll look at doing that. I think that was the last question I was asked. So I'm just trying to get back up to speed. I think we're also coming up just about on the hour. So we probably have covered, I think, most of what I'm seeing in the list.
I shared all of our dark and dirty secrets while you were gone.
It's probably better if I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
They're all my fault.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this makes sense. I love what's happening on Telegram. If you guys have any questions, please, you know, fire them off anytime. And China, you know, if people don't have any more questions, why don't we move this to Telegram where Richard can probably participate? And yeah, let me just close by saying again, thank you. Like, honestly, thank you to everyone who's here. We're really pleased with what's happening, and we're convinced it's going to keep happening. And we hope that everyone continues to find Saito very, very rewarding in pretty much every way that a project like this can be. So yeah, thank you very much. Come to Telegram and we'll push Richard there if you have any more questions. Thanks, guys.